Welcome, everybody, to the May meeting of the Southampton Village Planning Board. Could I have a motion to open the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
First item on the agenda is 554 Hill Street, which is application come back to us after ZBA approval. At the work session, we were discussing some of the aspects of the sketch plan and requesting from Nelson Pope and Voorhees to do some additional requests for data and information about areas where we have questions.
Want me to talk about it? Okay, so I had put together a memo that was dated April 18th. I've modified that memo to be dated May 3rd to add additions for requests for information that would be included in the final submission, final application for subdivision. And that would be adding a typical lot layout that kind of shows that the IA system can work on these different lots, the access works, that the drainage works, and to help the planning board visualize what a development might look like on the site within the building envelopes that have been approved by the zoning board, as well as full roadway design details for the access road from Captain's Neck Lane to Lot 3, the southern lot, that the engineering be conducted in such a way that it shows that there will not be additional flooding to properties in the surrounding area, that be part of that consideration. And then I don't believe I changed the last one. We talked about the confirmation from the ARB that if appropriate, the OPRHP regarding the significant or non-contributing nature of the historic structures on the property. Mr. Robinson had suggested possibly that the applicant could apply for a certificate of appropriateness, I believe it's called.
Or just a resolution from the board. I don't think they'd be issuing a certificate of appropriateness necessarily, depending upon how the application was submitted, but if it gives any further refinement to the consideration of the planning board, that would be an option.
The other thing I did is just so that way you had them at your fingertips, the copy of the zoning board resolution, as well as the letter from Zachary Studenroth regarding the historic nature or non-historic contributing nature of the houses, as well as the certificate of occupancy for 554 Hill Street. So you have those available in your packets.
So basically, the request from the ARB would be to just confirm that they are in agreement with Mr. Studenroth's findings.
No, I think, if what I understand,
That would be the theory of it.
Our duty is to have that decision made by the right authority.
Correct.
We had it presented by us, other than formally on a historical thing, to not regard it in making the neg deck decision, which is fine. That's what council advised us. It was not an issue with making neg deck. However, with the history of what's going on in the neighborhood, up and down Hill Street in particular, that anyone can see.
But that's the territory of the ARB, so we're going to request that.
If they make a ruling, we're fine.
Right.
Gail, has there been a submission to the ARB yet for a certificate of appropriateness to demolish either one or both of the houses?
No, there hasn't been.
Yeah.
That would
So they're going to have to approve that?
That would follow anyway. I would submit that that's a parallel thing. It shouldn't necessarily hold you up in your movements. And by the way, we'll remind the board that on a number of occasions in the ZBA decision, they themselves addressed it, but I would suggest that if we're going to look at that at all, we proceed in a parallel fashion.
Exactly.
In other words, you're approving something on the condition that they approve a demolition. If the board didn't approve the demolition, then obviously things would have to change.
Exactly.
So Kathy, the next step, now that you've prepared this more fleshed out document based on our additional input from the work session, is for the applicant to then provide us with what's requested here, correct?
First, the first, as far as procedure goes, the sketch plan should be approved by this board, which would say that this is a minor subdivision by definition, and that the applicant should proceed with a final subdivision application and include these items.
What is in your sketch plan that's adequate? And could you put away for a minute major and minor, which is an issue that may have some gray areas in it from all that I've heard so far? If they put down the sketch plan, is it this, and we know what the building lots are, because it was used to make the neg deck decision, perfectly adequate for those purposes. Will they have to put in where they intend to construct houses, or just these are the building lots that we'll fill in eventually, or height, or what is in it? What will be in the plan that comes before us to say, yeah, that's going to be an adequate subdivision of acreage?
For the sketch plan decision, it is the plan that has been before you that shows the building envelopes that
So
were,
it's a series of boundaries of proposed lots,
yes, with the
which are the
areas.
lot lines that what was submitted to the zoning board to view on what's the acreage between R120, R40, R20. That's what seems to run the restrictions that the ZBA deals with.
Right.
The size of the lot.
Size of the lots.
Goes through the code as to what you have to do. So nothing more than that.
Right. And the zoning board decision actually does state that there's that the planning board does have some flexibility in modifying the building envelopes and.
I saw that. I'm aware of it. I just know
Right.
what's coming at us. Because we
Right.
cut everything off with a very explicit recommendation of our council to do the neg deck. It's gone. Now the ZBA has done its job. And so we have to do adequately what's coming back to us. And I saw that item.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And your suggestion, I attended at least one of those ZBA things. I even showed up in the picture so I can confirm if my memory's right. It was right before an extended performance by at least two of the council in this room went on, and I sat through it all, so I remember it all now vividly because I looked at it again. I've looked at it twice and been there once for at least one of them, so I know roughly the situation, but it's a question of, on those lines, we have input, which for some reason we may decide to do, we may not, but other than they're giving it back to view it, that's it. We don't deal with all that other stuff that's for the ZBA, pyramids and sizes and all that sort of thing.
The sizes of the houses will still be dictated by the zoning code.
Yeah.
Any kind of pyramid, they'll have to conform to pyramid laws. And all of these will go before the ARB for design. But from the perspective of the fact that this is you said not minor just means the number of lots.
Right.
A major subdivision, generally, you're putting in full drainage, you're putting in roadways. The reason this
The
would be
burdens go up, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So more design-related work. So we felt that this requires some of that design work because of the access from Captain's Neck Lane.
Based on everything I could read and recall, there's some sub-details in this minor topic that came from our planning consultant, who's also the planning consultant for the ZBA, so presumably Nelson Pope and Voorhees, common knowledge or something to do with which way the houses face and facing back lines. That was stuff that you all, in your commentary, are in the proceeding.
Right.
Is that something we just need to confirm? I'm just worried, the reason I'm worried about what are the details of doing this just as properly as we can to discharge the applicant's burden? I don't want to discharge it. Look, if he asks me to, we'll absolutely do it. I just want to discharge it as impeccably and properly as we can. Do we just confirm your findings, for instance, on that one? That's the one issue I remember, something about on these lots, there were going to be two back-facing, which way they go.
Right, where should the front
One
yard be?
detail, one detail.
Versus, yes. We had provided some input on that, yep.
Yeah, it's okay.
And so the two rear lots, one is being accessed from Hill Street, so that, the front yard seemed logical to face Hill Street.
Okay.
And one is being accessed from Captain's Neck Lane, and it seemed more logical that that would be the front yard.
Okay.
And then the two rear yards would face each other, those two lots. And that just, more typical design.
Do we as a planning board get into the related stuff, like swimming pool. I mean, we finished the 5-house issue, now we got 3. Do we
No.
finish things like swimming pools or tennis, or all that rest of that stuff? Or are we just doing
No.
what's there, right?
No, because if it can fit afterward, then they have every right to build a swimming pool or a tennis court.
No, I understand.
And so,
But in
then it
looking
becomes a
at-
building
Yeah,
department
but
issue.
in terms of looking at the neighbor, there's another issue about the neighborhood for the change, it's in and out. That part's not something that we're, to make it proper, supposed to deal with. That'll be whatever it turns out to be.
Yeah, it'll be up
Okay.
to the individual homeowner.
Okay, thank you.
So just for me to get the order again, so the sketch plan calls for the road, the driveway to go onto Captain's Neck Lane. We have some concern about whether that's feasible, given the drainage and flooding and issues, and we're requesting additional engineering information about that. So how can the sketch plan be approved before that information is available?
We actually had our engineer look at it, the village engineer looked at it from the perspective of, is this doable as far as the slopes go? Is it possible to put in some kind of an access to this? And, he's an engineer, he looks at it and he
Right.
says he believes that, yes, that there shouldn't be a problem building a road to this. So, I have faith in engineering.
That's the construction decision. We have at least one part-time engineer
Right.
with us, so he can lift his leg over if he wants to say, yeah, he's a good engineer.
But assuming that information is debatable, and once this application moves to public hearing, in the event that opposing information regarding the feasibility that is presented to the board, giving the board other information that we did not have initially, how would it then be possible to decline that plan, having already approved the sketch plan?
No, I think with the sketch plan, it really is it's a preliminary, it's looking at the general form of the subdivision and the number of lots, basically. And there's always, you can always, if it's not feasible, it's not feasible, but
Okay, but if their judgment's really, I have a question which I posed to Bo before, and having listened again to presentations in front of several times in front of the ZBA, to the extent that the adjustments that have been now approved in principle by the ZBA is to do 2 interior lots with no street frontage is the buzzword I learned. I'm not sure I knew that one before, but non-flag lot, which
That's
is what we
correct.
usually get normally. To the extent that that is a particular burden, I believe if one does all their work, there are very few non-access interior lots in this village. If there's a lot, I'd be surprised. There may be a couple, but they're very few, and it's been not a common practice in the 50 years I've been slightly aware of it here. If we're doing that, can we ask for the covenants to go for approval by the council for the trustees? Because if the lots are not owned by the same applicant in the future, it seems to me that's something we may have a burden to have anticipated having be in an orderly fashion if we approve this. So I don't know whether you and Chick have experience in this, whether you've got relevant stuff to advise us on, and we'll obviously ask Bo. But what do we do?
we're creating the legal
Yeah.
access to these as if it were.
Physical access is one thing, but what happens if there's a change? In other words, we have an application here where we're dealing with forever on South Main Street, I believe, where what was done years ago was a little bit of a change, and it's driving Mr. Goodmartin crazy to get it fixed, I think. But anyway, these things can happen. Life goes on in the village. But if these lots are not ultimately owned by the same applicant, what do you do? What if someone says, gosh, it's not a flag lot? Or we have remedies, we understand flag lots. But what about the easement? Repairing.
The easement is in perpetuity, Alan.
I know, but we're now going to approve physical attributes of the easement, drainage, repair, flow. It's Kathy said, we're getting the smart engineers to say it's adequate, okay. But who
Well, wait a minute.
deals with it?
The access from, there's only a portion of the access from Captain's Neck Lane over in Eastman, is there not, Captain?
No, there's an access over the front lot from Hill
Yeah.
Street onto
Yeah,
the
right.
lot.
And what's the access from Captain's Neck Lane? Is that in fee simple?
It's an easement.
Easement, it's just an easement.
The whole length?
An easement.
Yes.
An easement. And, you
An
know,
easement from Captain's Neck Lane to
it's a
Lot 3.
private contract among landowners. That we have no interest
And we
in.
have an easement on, and we have the easement on his.
Yes.
Right. So, all right, so I'm not sure I understand the question, but, say,
Administratively,
right.
when my,
Well, that easement is
Grandchild-
that easement is granted in perpetuity.
that's physical access.
So if the ownership is,
What about any, if there are, there may not be any, what about related details on things like, for instance, drainage? What if it runs off one way or the other? What if it runs? This issue has been raised for 10 years.
well, the drainage doesn't, the drainage isn't affected by the legal status of the land.
I understand, but
Okay, and Kathy just told you that the engineer has reviewed it and said that the drainage is adequate, or the
Well, it's feasible,
specifications
that it's
are-
feasible.
feasible.
Right, it needs to be designed. So are you asking who's going to pay for it?
The applicant owns it all. He can pay for it. I'm not worried about who's paid for it. What if it doesn't turn out as planned because it's going to go downhill materially to what used to be a drainage area off Hetty Creek? Even David Emily said, yeah, but that's history. We don't have to worry about Hetty Creek anymore. I understand all that. But what if the specifications that are dealt with right now about the drainage, where it runs, what if they don't work as predicted? If it's the same owner, he can deal with himself. His right hand will deal with his left hand. Okay, I understand. What if there are two owners in the future? Who deals with it?
I mean, I would plan for it that there will be two owners, that these will all be individually owned, and there needs to be an easement that actually sets up almost like a mini homeowners association of who's going to pay for the improvements on
Okay.
that part of the property.
That's my point.
So that there is some legal work.
That could be fabulous.
Yeah.
That's fine. I'm not going to do it,
Yeah.
because I'm not going to do the drainage either. But I know that 10 years ago, this was raised as an issue, a serious issue. It was before the ARB. And at the last minute, one of the ARB members and the first meeting of a new member approved it instead of disapproving it. So that issue's been on the table for 10 years. So it's not trivial. So people have been worried about it, who are neighbors. And it's on the public record, the only little bit of the public record that relates to this property. Because everything else is missing, as I said. So we ought to get, I don't care what it is, just so we get it right. Because I've spoken before, you know, the counsel for the applicant knows, both of the counsel. I've got a view that if, because of the extra burden that's imposed on us by the applicant, just situationally, this has to be meticulous, so we just have to get it right. And the burdens change a little bit, but this is a real one. Okay, that's what I mean by a review. Some deal that is approved by the village. I mean, what we have this one here for right now in front of us for Chef Tell. Bo's an expert on. Bo even remembers it from his youth. That thing went in a long time ago, and now it's sort of come out, and we have to deal with it. If something's on this one, let's get it as good as we can for the future. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, could I say something to shed a little bit of light on this and maybe cut through some of the discussion, if you don't mind? I just want to point out, first of all, that as Kathy points out in her memo, a sketch plan is really a recognition of a general agreement of the form and layout of the subdivision. It is not an approval of the subdivision. All of the things you've been discussing now are things which we would have to demonstrate to your satisfaction in the context of final approval. The drainage, the access, all of that, everything that you say, you can address it at the final approval. That's when these things normally happen. And God knows I've done more subdivisions in this village than probably anybody else who's still living. So I think I should know something about it. So I would ask you, given the circumstances, that we're looking for a sketch plan approval, which is just what it is. It is not an approval of the subdivision, that we move forward to a decision on that will let us get into the issues that you have raised and that Kathy has raised, and we're more than happy to do that at the appropriate time. But I would ask you to bring this matter to a vote at the next meeting on the sketch plan, because I don't think there's anything. It's also important to note that many of these issues were specifically addressed in the Board of Appeals decision. One of the variances we needed was the easement access to the two lots. The Board of Appeals looked at that. They gave us the permission to do that. So that's already been pretty well settled. The design of it is something else, and the control of it is something else, and you have every right to talk about that. You have every right to talk about that and make it as a condition, but that's for final approval. So I would ask you to move forward on the sketch plan.
Thank you. Jim, Steve, Pam?
Kathy, would your list of things that you wanted done, that's for the sketch plan?
No, that's
it's
for,
not. It's for the
that's, so there's a whole menu of items that are required.
Covers a lot.
And
But
More-
they're-
right out of the
but
code,
they're
and
for the
then,
final subdivision.
and these
Covers
would be
more than
things,
what they'll say.
exactly.
Does cover more. My speech was just to say, I hope the applicant has that in mind, because this is done serially over, I mean, you have, 1.5 of the members here have only been here for part of the time, between Jane and me. You know, this is 5 years, I think you said, to now, so I've covered maybe half of it, and Jane's here for about 3 meetings or something, so we're catching up to stuff that came before, so this is almost like a resubmission. Because when I joined, I was told erroneously that we were deciding all sorts of things that Bo then said were none of our business. And so we didn't. We did the neg deck and got to this other stuff now. So if it's a matter of, I guess, timing for this obscure process, it probably doesn't happen a lot in the village. So now it's almost as if you and anybody who cares to speak to us is coming back again. Okay, now it's on the table. It's not all that old history, forward and file, all that stuff from the fire department. This is it. Now what do we do? New set of burdens for us, and I'm ready to, we're just so it meets the standards.
As I repeat, anything and everything that you talked about here, we have to address at the final approval. That's the subject of a public hearing.
No, I'm with you.
No problem.
Thank you.
Right, and Alan, this is just a sketch. Like, we're diving in deeper now than we need to be, I think.
That's what I'm trying to find out, how far
Okay.
it goes, because we've been told it was not things before, and then, so I'm trying to get the process right. This doesn't usually happen.
No, I understand.
And as Roy says, he doesn't even go meet with the other managers of the other boards at the same, and this stuff happens in this serial fashion, so it's kind of inefficient for us.
Okay. We will review your memorandum, Kathy, and consider the approval of the sketch plan at the next meeting. Can I have a motion to adjourn 554 Hill Street?
So
I'd
moved.
like to comment. Can I make a comment before you close?
This is not the public hearing section of the application, is it?
Yes.
It is?
Yes.
Everything is.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, he's out there.
I thought we had to open the public hearing on the,
It's a public
Anyway.
meeting.
It's a public meeting, you can make a comment.
Mr. Bragman, excuse me, yes, you may make a comment.
I don't have much. I'm Jeff Bragman. I represent the neighbors in opposition. But I just wanted to emphasize that the fact that the zoning board approved a variance is not the same as the work that the planning board does to examine whether, you know, a proposed access makes sense or doesn't make sense. And clearly, we don't have an adequate record as of today for you to make that decision, because we haven't yet seen an engineered plan of that roadway, and there are issues that relate to the drainage. Apparently, they need a retaining wall, that's what I understand. It's very close to the property line, it's close to one of my clients' property line that's planted. So I just wanted to, you know, strongly suggest that you don't just move ahead on a sketch plan. You know, the idea that a sketch plan, you're just approving the form and shape of the subdivision, yeah, that's true. But in this case, you know, I think you have an obligation to look at the practical realities of building that driveway from Captain's Neck to see if it actually works. And so it isn't advisable to simply, you know, green light the sketch plan and then say, oh, we'll take a look at it later. So I'm happy that you're waiting on the decision about the sketch plan. You certainly should be looking at a real engineered plan so you can make some, you know, factual decisions about whether it works or not, or whether it's a good idea to move in and out of there. There's been some comment on the use of the easement, and it's from what I can tell from looking at your records, we went back pretty far in village records. I couldn't find another example of a subdivision that used an easement in place of a flag lot. And I've told this board before, and I'll say it again, that it's a terrible precedent for the village. You shouldn't be creating lots like this. It's not good planning. And the idea that, exiting on Captain's Neck makes it a good idea is wrong, because your statute has in it a formula which represents a policy against flag lots in subdivisions unless they're oversized. And that's a good policy, because flag lots, some of the lot area is occupied on the flag. So the fact that they can circumvent that, and that's what's going on here, they've circumvented that by creating an access that looks, feels, and operates like a flag lot, but it's not a flag lot. And it's got an easement instead of an actual, what lawyers call fee ownership. Like somebody actually owns that. The inner lot owns the access that goes to the edge of the roadway. That's, in my, opinion, it's a safer, better, meaning safer from a planning policy, not talking about traffic
Can I
safety.
interrupt for 1 second? How do you respond to Mr. Flanagan's point that the zoning board has already approved the easement?
That really does, it doesn't really matter in terms of what your job right now is looking at the easement and seeing, your job is not evaluating the standards for issuing a variance. Is there a practical difficulty? Your job is to look at whether it functions well. And I would say a second layer of that is, as a planning board, to examine the policy decision of allowing an easement over that roadway. The fact that they've granted a variance doesn't deprive you of the responsibility, doesn't make that responsibility disappear to evaluate whether it's practical and works and it doesn't cause any drainage problems, flooding problems, does the retaining wall work? And I think as a second matter, you have the right to look at it and say, this is not a good policy decision. It doesn't appear to be a decision that's supported from what I can tell, having, made a diligent search of the village records, I can't find another subdivision that did access this way. And it just happens that in this case, it enables an applicant who's got is a public official in this village to get an extra lot of yield out of it. Just a coincidence. So I think there's still an open policy question and a factual question about whether this thing functions. And the board is not deprived of its power to look at that. I think you have an obligation to look at that before you make the decision. So again, I'm happy you're waiting. We'll come in and probably have something to offer on that as well. And it reminds me of what's going on with the house on site, where our contention is it's a contributing property. Here you are, 3/4 of the way down the football field, and nobody really knows whether that house is, or at least you claim you don't know whether it's a contributing property or not a contributing property. It's like that's just not the way to make decisions. You got to know the facts first. Thank you.
I have to respond to that, Mr. Chairman. A lot of what Mr. Bragman says is true, but that's the purpose of a final approval. And we will have to address the drainage. And by the way, as a matter of law, once the Board of Appeals has granted the kinds of variances that they granted in this application, that becomes the zoning of that property. That is a legal use as determined by the Board of Appeals. Your job is to determine and make sure that it works, which is what Mr. Bragman said. And we don't disagree with that. We'll have to show that the drainage works, that there's no problem with the neighbors. All of that I agree with, but the time to do that per your code is final approval. And people will have any opportunity they want to speak at that point. So I respectfully request that because this is a sketch plan and as Kathy has defined it, the time is now to move forward with it.
Can I ask a question? Is that true? Bo, is that the way our code works? If the ZBA can change zoning to fit whatever, any applicant can get a zoning change from R20 to R7.5 to R40 to R120. The zoning board has the power to make that change for the village. Is that the way our code's set up? They can just change it.
It's not our code, it's actually New York State.
New York State allows them,
General municipal law.
allows them to change the village's zoning district.
Once the relief is provided, that becomes the zoning for the
They
property.
can make relief to the zoning restrictions. Okay.
That's their job.
If that's what the law says, that's what the law says. I didn't know.
Doesn't one have to question the wisdom of just taking a zoning line and going straight down
That's a separate,
the property?
what causes a problem, Bo, is other than what, I'm just into the power. We'll get
Well,
the
there
solution.
has to be a power somewhere to
I thought
correct that.
that the trustees of the village historically were the ones that set up the zoning laws, which they amend from time to time in various aspects. And where the stuff falls physically was part of their power. If it's not, if it's a state law overrides it and says
could be
a
also-
zoning board of appeals can change what the trustees have set up as an area for zoning, thank you. I'm fascinated to know that that's the way the law works. I was not, before this, aware that was the case.
Any further comment?
I don't see the reason to hold this over until next month I agree with what Kathy's saying, where it's, if we have, in order to move ahead, we have to give them sketch plan approval so they can put all the information on that we can then digest. What are we going to get by waiting another month? Have the work that's supposed to be on something that we're supposed to ultimately approve?
Well, we just got this thing, I mean, I just got it this 5 minutes ago. I'd kind of like to review it. I'd also like to really dig down into the legal aspect about whether sketch plan approval lends any additional weight to the application, which then has to be counteracted in the final plan approval. I don't want the applicant saying down the road, well, you gave us sketch plan approval, so now how are you against it at this point, which I feel has happened in this application before. I don't want to do that anymore. So I want to really find out if we really need to get sketch plan approval first before we can determine the merits of the engineering status of that easement. I don't understand why that can't be done at sketch plan phase.
Why
You have to look at the code. The code specifically defines a sketch plan, and it defines final approval. Sketch plan is a fairly narrow thing if you look at the code. We're not denying that we have to address all the concerns that you've raised, but there's a sequence and a procedure for it, and we'll do it, we're happy to do it, as I've indicated before. So I don't expect you to vote on this tonight. I would hope, though, that you would take it under serious consideration at the next
I
meeting.
just would like to get opinion from council and make sure that in terms of voting on the sketch plan, it doesn't lend any additional weight to the validity of the application.
I think it does lend additional weight, Roy. I mean, this is a sketch plan approval.
Right.
Every increment, it's like building a building. Every brick you add to the building is another brick that the building is complete. Right?
Right.
So yes, you could well be confronted with somebody saying, well, you approved the sketch plan. That solves this issue that's in front of you at that time. So, but what Gil is saying is that there is a incremental procedure here, that we're not designing this from backwards forwards. We're not, in other words, we're not approving the entire plan at the DEC declaration issue. We're not approving the entire plan at the sketch plan. But certainly it is an incremental progression of the refinement of the issues and the elimination of potential problems. If somebody's got a problem with an easement versus a fee simple, or the shape of a lot, or something like that, there is a time in this process to address it, and we're moving forward with this. I don't know what more I can say to you. I mean, it is, yes, it's an incremental progression of the subdivision process.
So why don't we examine this question now then, instead of later?
Well, that's up to the board to determine if that's what you want to do.
Mr. Chairman, again, I would draw your attention to what the code says. I would encourage you all to read the section of the code that deals with what a sketch plan is and what a final approval is.
Can I make a comment here? I don't-
No, this is getting out of hand. I
Well,
gotta tell you.
getting out of
I've had two of them talk, they're double teaming.
I'll say something else. You've made accusations against my client, which are actionable, and if you do it again, we'll take the appropriate action.
I'm going to do it again. I'm going to say
go right ahead.
that he's an individual who's a public official in the village. That's what I said. You know, I want to make a simple point. You should know the facts before you're called upon to decide at every stage as you move through a review process. You just got a report, 5 minutes ago. You don't have an engineered plan for the road. How can you argue that it's logical that you decide that the road should go there before you have any facts to know whether or not it can function well? It's pretty much common sense. It's pretty much common
I
sense.
believe Gil asked if we could postpone this until June 4th. He wasn't asking to do it tonight.
That's what I heard too. That's
Yeah.
what I heard.
So-
But I'm speaking partly because of the advice of counsel and because of the suggestion that now's the time, because you're in, the sketch plan phase. It's like, why would you approve a sketch plan if you don't know if it works? That doesn't make any sense. I mean, the law is not...
Jeff, I didn't say that.
Well, that's how I heard it.
Mr. Chairman, I will move that we adjourn this until the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I believe every member of the board voted aye on that, Antoinette.
Mostly ayes.
The next application is the flag lot landscaping of SH28 LLC at 28 Gin Lane.
You have a written decision approving the application. An affirmative vote on the decision will be to approve the application.
Thank you, Bo. I note in your decision that you've done as requested and added in the last paragraph the requirement that the covenant be created, requiring full review of this in the event the property becomes
Absolutely correct, yes.
owned by other parties.
Yep.
Motion to vote on the resolution.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor of the decision?
Aye.
Jane?
Oh, sorry.
Aye.
Steve?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Aye.
Tell someone for a copy.
There's an extra copy in the file.
We'll show you.
Thank you, Bob.
You're the quality,
We
you're
fix them
the
all the
quality
time. We
control
fix them all
officer.
the
Yeah,
time.
you're the quality control officer.
Roy, would you sign the map, please?
Sign the map.
Is there another decision?
Pam, is there a copy in the file?
An extra one, let me, there's not an extra one, I'm
I'll
sorry.
send you one tomorrow if you want, Jeff. More than happy to, unless there's one up there.
There's one.
Yes,
You can have
okay.
mine.
Thank you.
But I fixed one typo.
Okay.
I'm going to hand it to Pam now.
Yeah, I'm going to climb over the chair.
Yeah, sorry.
Subdivision section, William and Nancy Schaffel. I believe that is adjourned until June. 83 Fowler LLC. I noted that Kathy, you had a new report regarding this application.
Oh, thanks. Perfect.
Okay, in this case, this is a final application for a two-lot subdivision at 83 Fowler Street, and it received a neg deck on December 4th of 2017, and the sketch plan was approved February 5th. We had written a memo that suggested a couple of items. One of the items has to do with the preservation of the buffer area between in the wetlands area and providing a no disturbance buffer. And so that needs to be worked out as far as covenants and restrictions and how the area is defined and actually creating a meets and bounds description for that area. So that needs to be worked out. Otherwise, everything looks fine, and I would suggest that the planning board schedule a public meeting, a public hearing on this.
That would be for the covenants and restrictions.
This would be actually on the subdivision.
The final
Yeah.
Final subdivision.
Final
approval.
subdivision.
We're at the final application. We have DEC approval, Mr. Lifton is here. We have DEC.
Do we have your name for the record?
Oh, I'm sorry, John Bennett, I apologize. I didn't mean to be presumptuous, I'm sorry. So we have DEC approval, we have health department approval, we have zoning variances, which were given for the tennis court. You've had a public hearing here, we've been before the Zoning Board of Appeals, total of three hearings, 2 hearings before the ZBA, 2 hearings here. There has been absolutely no adverse comment. Neighbors have been noticed for both hearings, no adverse comment. I'd ask that you waive the public hearing. It's common in these circumstances. If anybody had these are conforming lots.
I have a concern about that, because I feel like a lot of the public doesn't always know what's happening at these meetings. I'm new to this board, and so I think that we should consider getting a little bit more into the next century and maybe having some things on the website or something so that it's easy for people to see what things are coming up. Because if you put a notice in somebody's mailbox and they're not around,
Right.
they're not going to know about it.
I guess I can't argue with that, but that's from a point of view of on a given application. I mean, going forward, I understand that, but there was a public hearing that was open for 2 sessions before you on a 2-lot fully conforming subdivision, and then I went to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and there were 2 hearings on that as well. All had notice, so it's been both in the press and notice at the property on 2 separate occasions.
What are the neighbors?
There's a neighbor to the north, which is a Fowler family, and then there's Mr. Siegel, and
And are they year-round residents, or?
No, it's all vacant land.
it's all vacant land.
I'm just saying, I often feel that I don't know when things are being addressed. That's my only concern. I've been here and I've heard it, and I think we need to start making things happen, yes, but that's just my concern from being new to the.
Yeah, no, it's hard I can't criticize that. I mean, maybe there should be things on, I think the calendars are always available on the website, but, as a person looking at it, what does that mean? I understand. And I would have absolutely no criticism with that going forward.
I'm fine with saying okay today, but I just want to make that statement just because I do feel that there's been things that have happened and I haven't been aware of them.
You know what happens a lot, and this is really something that I've seen this happen, and it's a bit of an off topic, but it's appropriate to your conversation. A lot of times people send the notices, the taxes, it goes where the taxes go. The public notices, I mean, the notices that we all have to send out go to where the taxes go. And a lot of people send them to their accountants or a private, at a bank or something like that. And then, they claim, gee, I didn't get notice. Well, you're the one who sent it to your accountant. You're the one who sent it to your bank. So there's only so far you can go, I think, in trying to protect people from their own choices. And this is a more far-ranging discussion than whether or not I'm going to ask you to waive the public hearing on this one. I think there's been a lot of public input on
so much
this.
to get people to pay attention to what we're doing, but I do feel in form we should try to stick to the requirements unless there is hardship, unless you've got to started construction like immediately or something along those lines that would. In other words, down the road, somebody says, I really wanted to argue against that, but you guys never had a public hearing. That's not, I agree that so far there has been nobody that has done that.
Yeah.
me.
And
I objected to.
the tennis court, yeah.
Tennis court going the wrong way. We're paying the village in
But
tennis courts. And this one
that's a
goes the
done
wrong
deal,
way, and no
Alan.
one's going to use it.
I understand.
I got outvoted. It's going in sideways.
I know.
That's fine. I was the only guy objecting.
Sunken. But also it gives you an advantage if you're able to place your opponent.
No, it's not a game. It's a tennis court for other purposes.
Nice help.
I think we're going to stick to the public hearing, John, but
I got you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But if there is no opposition, it'll be quick and painless, and you'll be on your way.
I've heard that before. Thanks
I
a lot.
will make a motion to schedule the 83 Fowler LLC for a public hearing on the June 4th, which is a combination work session public meeting.
Second, third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Lot line modification for East End Holdings at 3842 Jobs Lane.
That's Gil. We met, it had to do with the plumbing.
Yeah. So actually, this is a lot line modification, but it's also 2 site plan applications.
Yep.
So, do you have something to show?
I think Kirkland has some useful comments based on Kathy's memo, so I'll let him, I've said enough for tonight, I'll let him say something.
Kirk Lehman, AML Architecture. We received your memo. I have a copy of our response, and plans will be submitted. I don't know if we should put it in tonight or wait.
You can give it to me, which would be helpful because I'm not in the site, so.
Okay, great. But we went through point by point, and I think we were able to address every single item. And working with Maresca's office, we've gone through it, and we would love to submit that to you immediately and get your review. So I think we're really moving ahead. Addressed all the issues, I believe, I hope.
The main one seemed to be just something about what I call plumbing, what had to do with the depth of the water going down. And if you could solve that, which looked like a 2 or 3 inch issue where stuff lay.
Exactly. We were able to change the size of the roof runoff dry well and play with the building heights and the sanitary height. So we're down to an inch here or there. It's very tight, but we have it. So.
Okay.
Great. So this week, you should have everything, including Maresca's plans.
Okay,
So
great.
we'll be in good shape for next month.
Great. One other thing is that the architect had also submitted a profile of the building, looking at if it conforms with the Village Business District additional regulations with respect to height. And it's not clear that it does. It's 116.11.3D, item 4, that requires that building height of one or more adjacent buildings shall not remain constant for more than 65 feet along the street, and they have a 71-foot long building. And they are going for, they're going to have to get relief for the depth of the building as well as parking. So they either need to add that to their list of relief or redesign, which that's what they want to do. But
So it's 65 versus 71?
Yes.
In parking.
yes, and then the depth of the building, I believe it can't be more than, is it 70 feet?
Yeah, 75 feet, but interestingly enough, a lot of what's there already exceeds that, so
Okay.
we'll actually be more conforming than what's there now.
So you're
Good argument.
in front of the ZBA on this?
No, because we wanted to get
us.
through you
It's
guys
us.
first to make
We're
sure that
business.
there were no issues before we went to the ZBA, but once we get some guidance from you, we'll go to the ZBA.
So that was the only other comment that we had from that. There's sanitary plans that were submitted as well, so I'll be having Gary Becker look at those for the work session.
And then can you circulate all that to us?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Sure.
I would then hope that if all is in order by the next meeting, we could schedule a public hearing for the following meeting.
No need for any additional information from Kathy after she's reviewed everything. I think we can do that.
Great.
Motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn for all purposes at the request of the applicant, the East End Holdings LLC, to the June 4th meeting.
Second.
Third.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The Beechwood Latch, 101, 109 Hill Street, application remains adjourned. John Danielson, 30 Sanford Place. Still awaiting additional submissions from the applicant.
Yeah, this one, actually, Jackie did reach out to the owner, and he's still trying to work out how he would deal with parking. So,
Do you think he can?
well, he'd have to get relief.
Yeah, I think he's got to go get that before it comes to us, right?
Right, so,
Because I can't see how he can do it.
no. Not what is it, 8 parking spaces? I don't think he can fit it.
Yeah,
And he
picks the
doesn't,
building up and moves it back.
he's saying he doesn't
Right.
need it, so that's why we have a zoning board, so.
This item remains adjourned until the applicant returns to the board with
Yeah.
further information.
Okay.
Life Storage, 3 William Place, pending written decision, which I believe
We have.
we have.
So one thing of note on the decision is that all of the plans, with the exception of the grading and drainage plan, are dated March 23rd, 2018. The grading and drainage plan had a minor modification, and he asked if he could just submit that one sheet, and we were all in favor of not having all that extra paper, and Jackie agreed to swap it out. So that's April 19th, 2018, that sheet. So the only conditions of this is that a performance bond be posted in the amount of $15,000 for the work that's being done within the village right-of-way.
Move approvals, Mr. Chairman?
Please.
I will move approval of the life storage application for
Second.
3 William Street.
All in favor? Jane? Steve?
Aye.
Pam?
Aye.
Alan?
Okay.
Aye. Hamptons HDA LLC.
There's a letter in the file requesting an adjournment until the regular meeting on June 4th to address the issues that were raised by the village engineer and by our office.
Make a motion to approve the request of the applicant to adjourn for all purposes the Hamptons HDA LLC on 116 North Sea Road.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So the next meeting, which would be a work session on May 28th, has been canceled because of Memorial Day. And we will have a joint work session, public meeting on June 4th, beginning in this room at 5 p.m. If there's no further business, can I have a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.